All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. This week is another amazing week because we've got a guy on here who is going to just inspire the crap out of you. He is not just a teacher and an educator of students and kids, but he is also a man that will inspire, educate, and grow you as an adult. He is a coach. He is a teacher. He's an all-around awesome guy. I consider him to be like the Tony Robbins of education. And that is high praise. He's part of the Codebreaker family. He is just killing life right now. And I am so happy and so honored to have Brandon Beck on the show with us. Brandon, thank you so much for being here today, man.
I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for that intro, by the way. That was incredible. Tony Robbins I'm a huge fan. So I don't even know how we can even be in the same place, but I will take it.
Should we just end the episode right there and you can just put that on a loop and let people listen to that?
Yeah, no, let's do that.
For people who don't know who you are, can you just take a minute and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a 5th grade monolingual dual language teacher in New York, in a suburb outside of New York City. I've been a teacher for about 20 years. I've been a coach as well, a soccer coach for the past 15 years at all different levels. I also run a small business that allows me to run soccer programs for kids ages 4 to 23, and a lot of our players go on to play college soccer. And I'm an educator through and through. I'm a product of 2 teachers, 2 retired teachers, my mother and my father, who they basically, both taught over 30 years of teaching, and combined, I think they're at 72 years of teaching. So I always like to say that I'm continuing the family business as an educator. And I am super excited to be here, and I'm super excited to become, what's called a newly and improved author with Codebreaker. Super excited about that because now it's kind of taken my career to the next level, and I now have the opportunity to share all that I've learned and learn from so many different people in the process. So really happy to be here and really happy to learn with you and learn from all the others out there.
That's so cool. I love how you took us on that path, and you talked about teaching, coaching. You even say the family business and now the authorship, and the fact that being a new author opens the door to new conversations. And be quite honest, I mean, that's why I do this podcast as well, is because it allows me to form new relationships and meet new people. And selfishly, I use this just to learn and grow myself. And I see that happening with you when you stepped off into the Codebreaker family with Brian Aspinall, who is all things to all the people. I feel like your world has kind of just opened up. You're no longer a coach and teacher in New York. Now you are reaching people all across the country, which is super cool. So I'm gonna put that there and put a little pin in it because I want to circle back to something you said early on. And there might have been some people that heard it and just said, "What?" And then they just let the journey go. Monolingual, dual language, or bilingual, whatever it was that how you capture that. Unpack that for us. What in the world does that mean, man?
Yeah, well, that's a really funny story. I mean, I teach in a school district that has about a 57% Hispanic Latino student population. And I had been teaching 5th grade there for a couple of years, and there was a dual language program that started 6 or 7 years ago, and it was working its way up through the grades to get to 5th grade. And if you don't know dual language programs, first of all, there are a million different models, and a lot of it depends on the community, the teachers, the philosophies, all of that. But basically the way that it works for me as a 5th grade teacher is that I basically teach a group in the morning in English, and in the afternoon they go to the other teacher and they're in Spanish, and I get the other class. So I basically teach 2 classes a day. But the reason I call myself a monolingual, bilingual, dual language, everything teacher is because what happened was when this program was making its way up to 5th grade, they needed a teacher. They needed a teacher to step in. And it's not really attractive to some people because you technically end up having double the work. You end up having double the students, but you don't really get double the time to plan and prepare. You have to work with a co-teacher. You have to work with someone else. A lot of times there's an ESL teacher in your classroom, so you're constantly collaborating. There's a lot of that going on. So I threw my hand up in the air, and I wanted to do it because I've always been interested in kids learning languages. I've always believed that kids need to learn a new language when they're young because it just opens up endless opportunities. So I'm the most unqualified person to do this job, but I threw my hand up in the air, and I was just just motivated. I said, you know what? I can do this. I may not speak another language. I may not have the certifications. I may not do this. I may not do that. And I just went for it. And isn't that kind of what it's all about? Isn't that what it's all about? Is just jumping into teaching opportunities. And it led me on this huge road. I actually, after teaching in the dual language program for a few years, I went to this state conference, this really big state conference, New York State Association of Bilingual Educators. And I had created a documentary that I created about the dual language program after I'd been teaching in it for a few years. And I had the opportunity to go and interview students that were now juniors and seniors in high school that I taught back in 5th grade. And I created this documentary. You can find it on YouTube. And I went to this conference. And here I am at this conference, all of these bilingual educators. I'd been teaching dual language for like 5 or 6 years at the time. And all of these educators are shouting out this word that they're bilingual teachers. They're this, they're that, they're this. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not a bilingual educator. I'm monolingual. And I kind of had this epiphany at this conference as I stood up, as I started to show the documentary. And I said, I just want to let everybody know that today I realized that I'm a bilingual educator, even though I'm monolingual. And it led me on this whole path. I was in the doctorate program at the time. I changed my dissertation. I changed it to focusing on this area that I had felt this way about. I felt that because I didn't speak a language and because I didn't have a certain certification, that I wasn't good enough. And that to me was like my aha moment. And it was important because I took that moment and I used it as an opportunity for growth. And I changed the person who I was, and I dedicated my life. I dedicated the next 2.5, 3 years to researching everything that there was about being a bilingual educator. I interviewed teachers. I sat in on professional developments. I talked to all of these people. I reached out to people from all over the US. And I basically became, got the doctorate. I got the doctor title on a dissertation about the perception of teachers and how they felt about their preparation, and why I wanted to know if there were other people out there that felt the way that I did. And it was an unbelievable process. Actually, like a couple months after graduating the program, the university actually reached out to me and asked me to rewrite a whole class that was going to be given to students that were teachers that were getting their ESL certification, their bilingual extensions. And once again, I was teaching these students that were going to be that were teachers and that were going to be teachers. I was teaching them, and I wasn't bilingual, and I didn't have the certification, but I had the confidence and I had the knowledge. And really, that kind of is me in a nutshell.
I mean, that's an amazing story. People that have listened to this podcast before have heard me make the statement, you can't steer a parked car, and I think that that's the story of your life, is that you say, let's take some action. Motivation beats certification. I'm going to take some action and I'll learn and grow and reflect on the process once I take some action. But you didn't just raise your hand and say, okay, I will learn about this. I'll go out there and take all the courses and then get myself certified. And then I'll jump in and I'll start teaching these kids. You said, no, these kids need somebody like me. I'm motivated. I want to try it. I'm going to go. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. And then it's continued and it won't stop. You are just continuing to learn and do more and more and more. Action beats planning. Motivation beats certification in all aspects of life. That is so good. How does that translate into your coaching world? I know you are a pretty high level soccer coach, and for full transparency, not a soccer guy. My kids are. I used to jokingly say soccer's the game for people that can't catch. Then I realized I'm just not very good at soccer, so I like to complain and bash it. But to be high level, to be a coach of high level athletes, it's got to be intense, and it's got to be. I don't know. I'll let you explain. What is it like to do what you do at such a high level?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's just an awesome opportunity just to kind of change it up. I leave school a lot of days and then I go to the soccer field for several hours. Um, it's a different classroom. And I always love standing in front of my older players. I love working with them. I love guiding them through, the principles, and I love guiding them through the development of who they are as a human being. So I teach, 10 and 11-year-old kids from 9 to 3 o'clock. And then I'm on a soccer field, usually in the evenings, with kids that are 16, 17, 18 years old. And sometimes I'm also on a soccer field with kids that are 4 years old. And I always say this about coaching. I always say this. I say, if you can coach a player who is 4 years old and you can also coach a player who's 23 years old, then you're a really good educator. You're a really good coach. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same for the classroom. And that's why I kind of take everything. That way as an educator. I'm also currently, as of last year, I'm also an instructor for the United States Soccer Federation, which basically means that I go and I also give licenses to grassroots level coaches. So coaches who are parents and coaches who are getting into the game with their kid, but they need a license. And I give those licenses as well. And so I've also have coaching education on top of my teaching education. So I have various levels of that. So I've been able to kind of take a lot of the things that I learn about teaching players on a soccer field and guided discovery on a soccer field, and I can take that to the classroom. And awesome. Not to mention in my school, I mean, with a lot of my students that come from various cultures, soccer, or as we like to call it in Europe, is football. It really gets into their souls. I mean, my students go out into recess and they play like 14 on 14, and they come back just covered in dirt. Some of them even wear their cleats to school. So there's that passion, and you use that. I try to use that to take me to the next level. And a lot of times, you learn in coaching how to coach in intense moments and how to make decisions on the fly that we're always doing as educators.
For sure. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that the best teachers are always coaches, but the best coaches are always teachers. And I see that there's that perfect blend of applying the knowledge. You can have the knowledge, you can have the academic knowledge and have it up in your head, but being able to put it into practice, and then always working to get better and refining things and studying your game, studying the game of other people, learning from others. I mean, they go hand in hand. Do you feel like you are the educator you are today because of your coaching experience? Do you see those two things go hand in hand?
Absolutely. And also, also growing up as a player, I mean, I played in college, I played semi-professionally. I was a captain of my team. And I always had coaches along the way that inspired me. And I still hear myself saying things that those coaches said to me. I still hear myself saying them on the soccer field, and I still hear myself saying to them, to students in my classroom. So yeah, it's such an important experience. And there's that whole collective efficacy. There's that whole team aspect.
Yeah.
And it relates to who we are as educators.
So let me ask you a personal question. Do you believe that you were born with this innate skill of being able to play soccer, or is that something that developed? Were you born an athlete, or did you grow into being an athlete?
I mean, that statement, I don't believe anybody's born to be anything. I believe that we all have to work to become what we have to become. And so that, as a soccer player, I came in contact with a couple coaches along my career as a kid that were high level coaches that took me under their wing. And when I was like in middle school and high school, they started asking me to come help them coach. And that part of it allowed me to already get this experience of dealing with managing players of different ages, differentiating skills for players that were, different abilities, and most importantly, making things fun.
Yeah.
So I don't think I was born with that ability. I definitely earned that ability, and I worked. I worked hard. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about being a monolingual, bilingual educator. I wasn't born to be that. I wasn't born to be a teacher. We had to work, and we had to, I had to embrace the struggles, and I also had to embrace the successes along the way.
Yeah, it's so good. It's that mindset of always looking to improve and better today than you were yesterday, and hopefully be better again tomorrow than you are today. So I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you, why are you better today than you were yesterday? What is it about Brandon that is better this year than Brandon was last year? What is it that you're currently working on to grow and develop?
Yeah. Reflect, learn, repeat. Those are the reasons why I am where I am, and those are the reasons why I continue to grow each day. It's funny. COVID has been really an interesting situation for me in terms of an educator. At the beginning of COVID, I kind of had this book that I was writing. I'd been writing it for the past 3 years since I graduated from my doctorate program. I kind of been putting pieces of it here, there, and everywhere. And then once COVID hit, I kind of got to the moment where I was like, you know what? It's time to do something with this. It's time to start putting things into place. It's time to start getting out there and reaching out to publishers and just seeing what happens. And all of a sudden I got onto Twitter, and I explored and developed this understanding of the Twitterverse, this whole different world. As I started to get out there, I started to see people showing up in different places. I started to see people writing like messages that were like A1, and all of a sudden this thing, and then a hashtag, then A2. I was like, what is going on with what these people are doing? And I soon learned that there were Twitter chats. And so I started to read through, I started to reach out to people. I started listening to podcasts. I started discovering even people like you. And all of a sudden I started realizing that there was this whole place that I could use for growth. I could use this place for reflection. And I started to find myself in circles, and my PLN, which I now learned is now something really important.
I'm going to pause you right now. So you're not a monolingual teacher. You are bilingual. You can speak Twitter as well. So you've got it down.
I'm multilingual.
There you
absolutely. Go. And that's the thing. Like all of a sudden I started realizing all these people, and I start learning about this guy named Brian Aspinall. I start learning about all these other people, and I go on to Brian Aspinall's website and Codebreaker's website, and all of a sudden I see this place where you can send Brian a little message about your book. And at the bottom of the book, it says, at the bottom of the site, when I sent it in, it says, all you need is one person to believe in your idea. Mm-hmm. And man, was that really how they do things at Codebreaker. And all of a sudden I send my ideas, I get a response back. I had sent it already to several different publishers, and I didn't get responses. And so I was just kind of like wading in the waters kind of thing. And all of this Twitterverse, all of these things that I was learning, all of these people that I was meeting, all of these things started to connect, and I started to develop into these, I do 3 or 4 weekly Twitter chats. And Brian gets on the phone with me, and we have a conversation, and I learn. This guy who has 7 million followers, I don't even know how many he has at the time, and I have like 200.
He owns Canada. Come on, let's just be real. He owns Canada.
And so I'm like, and nobody is going to want my book because I have 200 followers. What good am I going to do, if I don't have 10,000 or more followers? And so I was kind of like in this place where I was almost like this defeatist attitude of, man, maybe this just isn't going to happen yet. And sure enough, I get on the phone with Brian, and we have a chat and the conversation. And when I hang up the phone, there's a contract in my mailbox. So wild.
I'm connecting dots here throughout the course of your life and your career. You mentioned back in middle school and high school, you had these soccer coaches that looked down at you and said, yeah, we believe in you. Can you help us develop other soccer players. You went through your educational career, and you had this epiphany sitting at a conference that, hey, I can do this job. And you're surrounded by other educators who inspired you and empowered you to, yeah, you can do this job. And then Brian Aspinall kind of comes into your life and into your world and says, no, Brandon, you can do this work, man. I believe in you. You can do it. And I see this confidence from you that's like, yeah, I do have a voice. I truly can help some people here. I mean, is that truly the underlying message of your life, is having your own personal belief in yourself, but it's inspired from other people, that everybody needs somebody to believe in them? And is it your goal to be that person for others?
Absolutely. And another thing that happened too with me at the beginning of this COVID is I actually am a huge fan of Tony Robbins. You spoke about him before. I love that guy. Jack Canfield, Rachel Hollis, Brene Brown, all of these, motivational speakers. I love their books. I love their literature. And I always had this thing that, like, when I graduated from my doctorate program, that I was going to publish. I really wanted to publish. In fact, like the day that I graduated, I sent a chapter to someone, and they were like, sorry, this doesn't work. And I thought that I only could publish in this realm of official literature, like citations and all that stuff. And I was just like, that, I don't want to read that. So why would anybody else want to read that? Like, it's good. It's definitely awesome information. It's important. And we all go through it and we all use it. But I wasn't really like, ooh, yay, I'm going to dedicate my life to writing and doing all these APA references and yada, yada, yada. So I basically discovered, once I discovered Codebreaker and I discovered guys like you, I started to look and read their books and see their books and start to say, hey, you know what? Like, for example, like a guy like Darren Peppard, for example, I read his book, Road to Awesome. It's actually right here. And he's such an awesome storyteller.
Yeah.
And once I read his book, I went back to my own book and I was like, man, I have to put some of these really great stories in to make this come alive. And yeah, Brian kind of came out of nowhere and it was unbelievable. And at the beginning of COVID, I reached out to someone from Tony Robbins' team and I invested personally in a results coach. And so each week I meet with my results coach. He's in California. He calls me up. We go through goals. We go through what we're looking for. We go through what I want to do with my life. And it just totally transformed this process. Like, what was I going to do to get this book to the publishing stage? How many publishers I was going to reach out to each week? How many, once I got the publisher, then how much the book am I going to finish? How much am I going to revise? How much am I going to edit? What am I going to add? Who am I going to reach out to? What podcast? So just kind of like having a coach everywhere in my life has been how I've established or developed any success. I don't know what to do without a coach. And it's kind of the same with our students in our classroom, right? Like, they don't know what to do without someone guiding them. And that's like my purpose. My purpose is to inspire and guide people to believe in their inner genius. We're all really, really intelligent, and we all have these skills and these strategies and these beliefs inside of us, but we really need to pull them out and work on ourselves first. And once we work on ourselves, we can release that potential, that unlimited potential, on all those we teach. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, the premise of the book, and all the story that I've been talking about. The book's titled is Unlocking Unlimited Potential, because so many times in my life, I have found that there are ways to believe deeper in your purpose, and there's ways to believe deeper in our kind of future of being better each and every day. Better, like you said, better today than I was yesterday.
So how does a person identify their gifts, their strengths, their purpose? So I hear you're this guy that is truly out there doing all the things. You are so busy. I mean, you're recording a podcast, you're writing a book, you coach, you teach, you're got this small business. I mean, you're doing all the things. And I know for me personally, I struggled with that for a long time. I wanted to be the jack of all trades, but I realized very quickly I was the master of none. And sometimes it's other people coming to you and saying, hey, I see something in you. So then you run with that direction. But oftentimes, because you become that jack of all trades, you're constantly looking for that affirmation, that validation, and you find yourself chasing your tail because you're looking for approval from anybody and everybody. So for maybe this is a question you just want to answer for yourself personally, or for all of us as the masses, if you want to offer the free advice, I don't know. How do we determine our niche? How do we determine what we need to be chasing, pursuing, and growing into?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And that book is definitely, that answer is definitely in my book. Um, but yeah, I mean, we all have, it all starts with our why. You know, we have to start off with, why are we here? What are we doing it for? Why do we want what we want? You know, why, if we understand our why, and I always say this to teachers that I work with, once you've discovered your why and you walk through you've walked through the process of thinking back to what your story is, thinking about what your why is, and now identifying your purpose. Once you learn that purpose, once you write out that purpose better be somewhere in your classroom. That better be on the back of that better be on the back of the door. You got to touch that thing, like the play like a champion sign, like the Notre Dame football players touch as they go out into the field. Like you have to, everything has to be aligned with your purpose. And if it's aligned with your purpose, then everything else kind of falls into place. And that is essential to the development of that. And then there's parts of that, like, who do I want to be, you know, and how do I get there? A lot of us there, like you saw already and heard in my career, there were times in my career where I was waiting for someone to to tell me that I couldn't do something, or there was times, and that motivated me. And there was times in my career where I totally went through stages in my career where I felt like I couldn't do. And when I couldn't do, that would kind of drag me down, and it would drag me down for a while. Like, for example, like becoming an author and becoming a speaker and becoming a consultant, all of that, I was holding myself back from those things. I have a national board certification. I have a doctorate. I have all the credentials that I'm supposed to have. But I thought because I wasn't an administrator that I wouldn't be accepted in that field somewhere. And I was so far off. And that's what I learned during this time, that if it's something that you want and it's aligned to your purpose and you really want it badly enough, then you're going to figure out how to get it. You're going to be resourceful. You're going to use the tools. I literally Googled how to write a book proposal. I had no idea how to write a book proposal, and I Googled it. And from there, that led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We are in such an age now where everything is at our fingertips. I could be having a problem in class. I could write a Twitter post about looking for a new strategy, and within 5 minutes, I could have hundreds of people giving me suggestions and giving me ideas, because what I've learned is that you can't go at this alone. We're all in this together. You know, that phrase that's come up over and over and over again during this time of COVID. It's really true.
So I'm going to try to narrow this down a little bit, maybe even push a little bit, because I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts, because this is super interesting to me. So I grew up and I thought that I was going to go into broadcasting. I thought for sure I was going to be on Sports Center sitting next to Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann back in the day. And if that didn't work out, I was going to be on the Weather Channel. Either way, I was going to be on the news. That was my goal. That was my passion. But along the way, I faced some rejection. I faced some hurdles. And I decided to change paths and became a teacher and educator. I look back and say, okay, thank God, I'm glad I went that route. But often in our lives, we take the yes as an affirmation that we're on the right track. When should we take the no as a clear direction that maybe we're going the wrong way? You said that, you pushed through some hurdles and you pushed through some obstacles because you knew this is what you were supposed to do. You knew that you were supposed to publish a book. You knew that you were supposed to help some people. And because deep down, it was your passion. You knew that that's what made you tick. Are there times in our life, though, when rejection, hurdles, walls are supposed to stop us? Or are we supposed to just look for ways around?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. You know, one of my favorite quotes by Abraham Lincoln is, "A bend in the road is not the end unless you fail to make the turn." Yeah, and I think, that idea, and Rachel Hollis talks about this a lot. Like, she doesn't really believe that everything happens for a reason. She talks about her brother who committed suicide, and he that didn't happen for a reason. But there is silver lining in everything that we encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And as we encounter these challenges, it's how we choose to overcome, and it's how we choose to deal with them. If we choose to kind of ruin ourselves because of a challenge, and we start to put ourselves down and we get in the way of our own progress, there is opportunities for growth in all of these situations. So when that happens, so when you hit a curveball or you hit something that comes at you that kind of tells you, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing something. Well, then it comes back to, like I said, it comes back to your purpose. You might need to realign your purpose. You might have something happening in your family that makes you have to change gears. Maybe it's something financially, maybe it's something out of your control. And how we end up taking those opportunities, and how we deal in those moments, and how we use them as opportunities for growth and a lot of times we don't see it at the time. It takes us maybe a little while to get through it, and when we do get through it, we look back on it and we're like, that's what that moment was for. That's what I was supposed to learn from that moment. And it's that, like I said, it always goes back to those three words: reflect, learn, repeat. You reflect on your challenges that got you to this point. You learn from how to overcome those challenges. If this happens and gets in your way, you have to learn how to get around it. You have to learn how to get through it. You have to learn maybe to change your course of direction a little bit. And then you just keep repeating that. And you keep repeating that process that leads you to that growth mindset, that emotional intelligence.
Well, I'm going to circle back to some things you said early on about how none of us were given this this clear path for what we're supposed to be. We weren't born into any position. It's up to us to make the most of it and take advantage of our opportunities if we have them. But it's also about you establishing your why. So even going back to my dream of being a broadcaster, maybe I wasn't supposed to work at ESPN. Maybe I wasn't supposed to go down in Atlanta and work for the Weather Channel. But look, now 25, 30 years later, I'm doing podcasts. And I'm still exploring my passion and my interest. Maybe as a teacher or an educator, you weren't supposed to work at that school in that classroom with those kids. But are there still people that you can teach? Are there still people that you can learn from? Are there still opportunities for you to grow and inspire? Maybe you weren't supposed to write that book and the publishers weren't supposed to pick it up, but do you still have the opportunity to share your voice and to share your message? Are you supposed to be speaking at conferences? Are you supposed to be sharing with schools? Are you supposed to, who knows, maybe you're supposed to create a blog. There are ways for you to get back to figuring out that why and that purpose, even if how you plan to get there doesn't necessarily play out. If the road does twist and turn and change in front of you and you weren't anticipating it, if you're true to why you're doing what you're doing, you'll find a way to do it that might not match your original way. The how can change, the how can adjust, the where can adjust, but the why stays true. The why stays the same. And I'm super excited to be able to read this book when it comes out, because I feel like it's going to teach me a lot. It's going to hit me right where I need to be hit right now. And I know there's a lot of other people out there that are facing so much uncertainty in life and in their careers that it's coming out at the perfect time. When is this book coming out? I mean, can I go get it now?
You cannot get it now, but I'm excited to, it's actually, we're trying to plan this book coming out with my wife having our third child. So, because as you can see, I'm wearing my dad's 3 shirt.
Boom.
We have a third girl on the way. Really excited about that. Girl dad for life. But I was talking with Brian. I was like, man, should I do it before? Should I do it after? So it's going to be coming out. Looks like it's going to be coming out in November.
That's awesome.
And so, the book itself is kind of everything that I've learned as an educator through this process. It has stories, but it also incorporates, research and stories from people that are just not in the field of education. I've already mentioned a few of them: Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, Les Brown, and so many others. And those, there's so much. I read all the time. I love to read, and when I read a lot of these books, I'm highlighting, I'm underlining. I read a lot of these personal development books, even books by like John Wooden, um, all of these books about what it takes to become successful in life. But I found that a lot of the books that I would run into in the education field would be constantly quoting educators and not necessarily quoting the work that these personal development authors are doing. So I tried to incorporate a little bit more of that into this book too, as well as using a lot of the education gurus out there, Carol Dweck, Linda Darling Hammond, and more to say the few. But the thing is I'm trying to incorporate a lot of balance between my story, a balance between, the research that's out there, and a balance between something that's really entertaining and fun and exciting to read, and inspiring. Because at the end of the day, in order for us to unlock any potential that exists out there, we have to start with us, and we have to unlock that infinite power that we have. And then once we do that, it's contagious.
That's good. That's good. And I know people listening to this right now are already starting to feel like they've caught the Brandon Beck bug. That's good, because it is infectious. It gets in your head, and then it gets into your heart, and then it becomes who you are, and you start walking the talk. So that's so good.
Well, look, there's so many different ways that we can go about living this life. And even during COVID, I mean, as an educator, what a difficult time to be an educator. What a difficult time to be an administrator or a school leader. Oh my God, what a difficult time it has been. And we have a choice. Our choice is we can choose to wallow in the negative and go down that downward spiral, because those negative thoughts and those negative beliefs and those negative level of thinking that we have, it constantly continues and it spirals. And people, after a while, it's out of their control. They don't even realize that they're being negative. However, if we focus on the positive and the silver lining in the situation and the opportunities and the opportunities we have for growth, we're going to find that you will view this life that we're in a lot differently, a lot more positively, and it'll lead to more success no matter what.
That's it. So I'm gonna leave people with my own mic drop from what you just said while you're planning yours, because I warned you that at the end of this, I always give people the opportunity to leave us with that mic drop moment, that thing, like if we're picturing you staying on a stage, it's that moment where you drop the mic and walk off, and we're like, oh my gosh, that's what Brandon Beck is all about. What you just gave me is my own personal mic drop. It's the idea of reframing things is so powerful and so important. And I know that we all have a tendency, whether it's at the end of the night or the beginning of the day, to say, oh my gosh, either, oh my gosh, it's been such a brutal day, or, oh my gosh, it's so early, I can't believe I have to do this today. As opposed to, oh my gosh, look at all the stuff I got to do today. Or, oh my gosh, look at my calendar. Look at all the people that need me today. That reframing your mindset is so powerful. And it's not just a hokey motivational trick. I mean, it truly changes your health. Your physical health is impacted. Your mental health is impacted. And your ability to truly serve and lead people is impacted by that simple trick. So whatever you're doing right now, if you're listening to this before bed, if you're listening to this in the morning, or while you're driving to work, or wherever you're going, just pause for a second and think about how you can reframe your day, the things that you can be grateful for, as opposed to the things you have to complain about. So that's my takeaway from you. That's what I'm associating with Brandon Beck. But Brandon, what do you want us to associate with you? What is your mic drop?
Look, my mic drop would be pretty straightforward. I am human and I am not perfect. And even going through this process of writing this book, there has been so many times where I've been sitting there thinking, well, maybe this isn't good enough, or maybe this isn't that. And we all have those opportunities, and we have those things that happen in our life that we always, those self-limiting beliefs always come into play. That make us kind of doubt who we are. And one particular thing that I do every time I sit down before I'm writing, I wrote in my phone the top 25 reasons why people want to write this book, why people want to read this book. And I read it. And those affirmations. So affirmations, the moment I wake up in the morning, my feet hit the floor, I have about 10 different positive affirmations that I read through each day. And being able to kind of pay attention and control what you can control is most important. You can control your Twitter feed. You can control your social media feeds. You can control the way you react, and you can control the things that are constantly coming at you. So if you control yourself by having positive, surrounding yourself with positive messages, then it's going to become contagious. Like you just said, it's going to lead us on this path of enlightenment, and it's going to lead us on this path of seeing more opportunities for growth than the opposite. I completely understand that we are all human, and I'm not the one sitting here saying, oh my God, oh, it's okay, and dismissing any negative beliefs that we have as educators, because they're out there and they're concerns. And during this time, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of what if this happens? What if this happens? There's a lot of that. But the opportunity buried inside all of that is that us questioning is exactly that. We're questioning it because we want to make the best opportunity available to students. And at the end of the day, what is most important as an educator? It's the students. So if we root ourselves in understanding that the students come first, then everything else will follow. You'll be happier, they'll be happier, the school will be happier, the community will be happier. And at the end of the day, we're all going to be better off.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is how you drop a mic and walk off the stage. Well done, man. That was awesome. So Brandon, people are hearing you right now and they're like, man, I want to connect with this guy. How can people connect with you in your newly discovered Twitterverse and in your world?
Yeah. So first of all, I participate in all the Tuesday night 8 p.m. Codebreaker chats. That's number one. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Brandon Beck EDU. My website, brandonbeckedu.com. And you can also hit me up on email, brandonbeckedu@gmail.com. I love to connect, and I'm always interested in hearing people and hearing what they think. And I'm always interested in taking the learning to the next level.
That's awesome. And you can find all those things in the show notes if you are one of those overachievers and you actually read show notes. Otherwise, just go into your phone, type in Brandon Beck EDU. You'll find him in all the things because he's awesome and you want to track his journey. So Brandon, thanks again for doing this today, man. I appreciate it. I know sitting down and recording a podcast takes time, it takes mental energy and all the things, but providing value to all of us is so appreciated. And selfishly, I appreciate this conversation because I know that I am better right now than I was an hour ago. So thank you so much.
I did too. Thank you. I appreciate it.